Tonight, we see how Picard Season 3 is holding up with the second episode. Then we'll take a look at the exciting conclusion for 1923. And we'll head back out to the final frontier with DS9 and maybe a sneak peek of Mando. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back to The Writer Brothers, your Tuesday night home for Star Trek 1923 and Star Trek. Yes, it's another Final Frontier sandwich tonight as we get into why Picard is now the greatest show ever, or still the worst show ever, or maybe it's just okay. I mean, that's kind of how I feel. But first, we'll go ahead and go around the room, introduce our panel. Joining us by audio only is H. Marie. Imagine her waving her hands. Followed by Mr. Pollo Zapatos. Also imagine him waving his hands. Oh, no, wait, he did it for you. And, of course, Mr. Corione, Witch in Residence, who's giving you the old, the two-finger salute. Alright, so we're going to try something a little new for our shows going forward, and that is, as you know, when shows are running, we typically do discuss spoilers. And the only time we don't like to really discuss spoilers is for stuff that we really, really like. But I think we're going to go ahead and just completely throw that out the window entirely and have a new set progression. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start with our sort of non-spoiler overview. What we're going to do is do the quick little recap of some of the plot elements, and then just kind of give our initial first impression. And then, of course, what I will do then is I'm going to change the graphic to condition alert spoiler. And that's when the rest of the discussion where we talk about all certain key plot points, exciting moments and stuff that yes, if you don't want it ruined, that'll be the chance to mute the stream. This has the added benefit of, yes, you could just mute our stream and just look over and wait till you see that red spoiler alert stand down, because each segment we will just do that. That's how we're going to do it going forward. I think this is going to work out and be a lot of fun. So, all right.
So first, should we go to Picard lighting mode?
Yes, since we're going to go ahead and talk about Picard, because we didn't get any pop culture news arranged, but that's okay, because I think we've got a lot to cover on this particular subject. Green room discussion was getting a little heated already. All right, so this latest season of Picard, we've got Raffi doing Raffi things, working for Starfleet Intelligence. Everybody tries to well, let's see. I think we can kind of not. It's not really a non-spoiler, but surprise! The Titan comes in to save Picard and the new character, and of course Riker. And I think that covers all the non-spoiler plot points, unless anyone wants to.
Well, we can give the new character's name is Jack Crusher. There's nothing inherently spoilerific about his name.
Right.
There's nothing inherently spoilerific about saying that he's a little bit of a plays outside the Federation rulebook kind of individual. Pretty much has his own code of honor, shall we say. And yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things we can definitely say. Captain Jerkwad, as I'm going to refer to him for the remainder of the season, has managed to live up to his title completely the entire time.
You're just taking advantage of the. Yeah. I know. We're doing the. I have to shut up and let you continue.
You know, we can say that. We can say that. Seven was definitely in the episode. We can say that. We can further say that, yeah, Raffi was definitely doing Raffi things and displaying...
Some of our questions created by the blaster of choice.
Oh, you mean the pump action phaser rifle?
Yeah, we finally got an answer for the pump action phaser rifles.
We didn't get an answer for them. We just also heard our question asked in the episode.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense because if he's doing medical things and trying to bribe people with weapons, I mean, I totally buy him basically giving you, like, if the government designed a committee to design a rifle that was built and designed by the government, it's a pump action phaser rifle that alerts your enemies that you're out of ammo. And so it makes sense that he's going to give these weapons to these warlords. Because, they'll function and they'll do what you want. They're also going to screw you over in the process, but you won't know that till it's too late.
I mean, I do want one of those rifles. Like, I'm thinking about building one, but I'm also going to include a little mechanical device in them that pops up a little white flag when it runs out of ammo.
Hey. Gotta stop shooting, okay? I gotta reload, all right?
I'm going to call it the French phaser rifle. And
the French phaser. Oh, so you mean the French version? So the flag pops up right away and there's no ammo.
Yeah.
That's even better.
Default mode. Yeah. And I mean, there were some actually there. I will say this, with all my gripes about this episode, and I do have a bunch. Everything from basic physics in space to how certain things are handled. It's definitely an improvement over the first episode.
So we've made some progress. All right.
Like, I'll give it that it was an improvement.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, John.
Still adding like 1 to -5 on my score.
I would say the bad guy finally makes sense. Like.
All right. Whoa. Stop. Non-spoiler, just give your quick first impression, and then we'll go to spoiler alert.
No, I know. I'm just saying more along the lines of, in general, it's finally nice to see what the non-Federation parts of Starfleet actually look like. Like the human element of the non-Federation that's not about the whole utopia thing. Because, like, everybody can honestly say, watching Star Trek, there's no way that every human on Earth is vibing that. Like, only the people in Starfleet are going to be willing to, like, actually undergo all the uniform policy, all the communication policy, all the adherence to order and all that. So it's nice to finally get somebody who obviously earned human money. Like, I'm trying to be spoiler free, so vague on purpose, but it's nice to see somebody who has money.
Yeah. So instead of overthinking it, just give me your first impressions, and then we can go to spoiler alert, and then you'll be good.
Yeah. Well, overall, my first impressions for this episode is Rafi is. It doesn't make sense. I'm not a huge fan of her storyline so far, but mostly just because I'm annoyed with the whole junkie storyline. Mostly because I don't like sober people talking about junkies also in the future. Like it's a very weird conundrum. But other than that, like I'm having fun. I've had more fun in these 2 episodes than I had any time in the season 1, which is nice. And I've been having more fun than Strange New Worlds because it's actually got some stakes and some setup that make the stakes relatively worth it.
Yeah. So my overall impression with this episode is, you know what, guys? I think we've just been looking at Kurtzman Trek all wrong. I think we've just set unfair expectations. I think that we're just so blinded by our standards that we fail to understand the brilliance that is Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard season. God damn.
Oh, thank God.
Man, I wanted to go longer on that shit.
No. I was ready to pull out the Romulan ale and throw it at you like holy water, sir. And just refer to you as a blasphemer and to like send you home to repent.
I couldn't do it. No, I'm glad we have those shows, actually. I really am, but not for the reasons that you think. I'm never going to watch any of them again, like I said. But I've been saying on Twitter and whatnot that we basically have 2 shining turds of examples of what never to do for Star Trek or any show ever again. And so that's basically what they'll probably be remembered. It's like, yeah, this is when we tried this thing. It's like what they learned with Enterprise, right? Enterprise, what did we see in season 3? Aside from better storytelling and better everything, we had Star Trek back in the title. That was one of the big points that showed Enterprise was going to try and be taken seriously as a Trek show. And unfortunately, it got cut off when it did, but to no one's surprise, really. So I'm glad we have the garbage, because now we can see how bad things can get, and we can know to not go there again. Hold on. Think about it this way. I mean, what does "where no man has gone before" really mean in the grand scheme of storytelling? It means telling garbage from time to time, I would say.
Well, no, so to really jump off what you're saying is, finally, film educators have a multi-million-dollar failure to really just teach their students how not to do it with scene-by-scene analysis and high quality, high def. It's not like this was written in the 1950s when they didn't have a lot of like other stuff to work with. So it's like, finally we have a rubric for what to never do, and that we needed that.
Yeah. All right.
To me, what Kurtzman Trek is, and I finally figured it out. There's a test that they give everyone who wants to work at NASA, and that's they show them the movie Armageddon, starring Bruce Willis. And if they cannot point out at least half of the horribly factual, inaccurate things in it, they cannot work at NASA. I feel like the Kurtzman Trek should be like the test for writers. Like, if you can't figure out at least half the things that suck in this, you need to find a new profession.
Yeah. All right. So now let's get it.
Go back and study.
Yeah.
Because that's the beautiful thing about writing. You're not saving astronauts' lives. You're not going to space. You just need to figure out how to find all those inaccuracies.
Yep.
All right. So with that, though, let's go ahead and get to the meat and potatoes of this sack of crap. And that means we're going to set spoiler alert. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm going to work on that.
All right. Okay.
All right. So now we are discussing the spoilers of Star Trek Picard Episode 2 of Season 3. Already, Corione, see, I felt right out of the gate when we had non-public domain music start us off. I was like, oh, Here we go. Here we're gonna start pulling back the layers, and I was right because you ended up admitting that you felt this was improvement. So
Yeah,
already
but I mean,
we've already, you know, your statement about public domain music already aged like milk.
no, it really didn't.
Nah.
Because that song, I did the checking, is public domain because the guy who owns the rights gave it up. So it's still public domain music.
Well,
Fight me,
that's
sucker.
still really good on the artist though to do that. So I think that's worth acknowledging some praise. No, I'm glad you brought it up and, you know, slapped me wrong.
I did my I did my homework on this stuff. If one is to examine a fractal of stupid, one must dig down into the deepest levels and bring them forward for all to see.
Yeah, dude, that is the level of like, that's why we claim the title Writer Brothers, and that's the importance of what we mean by actually studying what we don't like. Like,
and by we studying, we just make the witch do it.
Study.
Yeah, exactly. I'm starting to feel like the unpaid.
Like Corbin's the one that's got like the hardest axe to grind with this one so far. He's been going in knuckle dragging the whole time, and instead of like actually being like what everybody thinks a knuckle dragger is, like just head in the sand, not listening. Instead, Corian's like, no, I'm listening so much that I double checked to see if the song was public domain because it sounded private, and I wanted to give them props, but couldn't.
Yeah.
No, look, I literally am of the opinion that if I state my opinion in somewhere like this, I need to be able to back it up with facts. Right? If I go in somewhere on something, I need to be able to prove it, you know, academic levels, because that way there can be no argument back at me. So with that in mind, yeah, let's start it off. Look, so we have Captain, man, I'm gonna keep coming up with names for this guy, like Captain Dillweed here,
or you know, Picard when Picard was Picard.
No, I disagree, because Picard would have gone, wait a minute, an admiral and his attaché captain grabbed a shuttle and bolted, and he's like a legend in Starfleet. Like, I can literally point it out. When Spock did this and ran off to Romulus, what did Picard do? He didn't say, well, he's on Romulus, too bad. You know, if he gets shot by the Tal Shiar, he gets shot by the Tal Shiar. No, he went and got him.
Okay? Well, no, he tried.
Well, he tried.
But then, oh yeah, spoilers for really old TNG episode. He tried, but then Spock was like, nah, I'm staying. And I mean, of course, the speech was a lot more. And actually, of course, rest in peace, Leonard Nimoy. Gone too soon. Well, he was 84, but still.
Dude, he could have been 500 and he would be gone too soon. But,
you know, I'm going to agree with that.
If only for his photography, because the dude was amazing.
Or his beautiful singing.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, honestly, though,
look, monologues. His monologue, like, he was a master orator.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I am saying this, though. Look, Picard has proven that when a legend goes and does something slightly out of character, he's going to go chase after the dude and be like, okay, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Clearly, there's something crazy going on here. We need to get to the bottom of it.
So then I guess
Dillweed doesn't care.
Well,
Captain
he
Dillweed
does.
Is more concerned about making his record look good.
Well, he's also more concerned about his crew. I mean, every point that he makes to not go get him is actually reasoned. Like, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm like, yeah, 2 lives for 150 or however many they said on the ship, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
That only made sense if he was there at the very last minute saying that. Except he was saying it literally from the moment they got in the shuttle and jumped. Like, he was actively, basically just like completely trying to give every excuse in the book. And that's the easiest one. Like, my people are more important than these 2 people. But that's not like that's the same thing like a doctor saying, I'm not going to heal this gangster because they're going to come into the house. It's like, no, you.
But then what does he end up doing, though? What does he end up doing? What does he end up doing?
Only because his hand was forced.
I mean,
he was pushed.
Seven of Nine literally had to put it to him of, you could be a hero and get a medal. Like, that's literally what she had to do to get him off the freaking couch.
Even worse, she had to actually guilt him. What happens if they die on your watch?
Yeah.
How bad is that going to look on your record? He was more afraid of the shame than he was of the prize. Like, so he's the very epitome of like brown noser. He only wants to get to the top. And I feel like
I don't agree. I think he cares about his crew, and we see that.
Well,
but
okay, here's what
I would agree, except he disrespects all of his crew at any chance he can.
What?
Like with Seven of Nine is the perfect example. His number 2, he won't even let her use her.
Yeah, because she's being insubordinate.
No, her preferred name. From the jump, she has to go by something else.
Well, no, she has to go by her born name, her given Earth name.
Right, but that's not her name. Not to her, not to anyone who knows her legitimately, personally, not even what she wants on her record, but according to him, the captain, he likes it because that's what the official record should look like. Like, he's the epitome of a brown nose.
Well, we don't know what his reasoning is. That reasoning hasn't been explained yet. For all we know...
I think, though, we can say this. We all know that in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, all of that, you could always tell, like, when an admiral showed up on the Enterprise or on Deep Space Nine, they were going to make life miserable for whoever was on that ship or that station. We can see that this captain is well on his way to that admiral's chair to fill in that exact role in Starfleet. Like, he is bucking to be Admiral A-hole within, like, 5 years.
Like, inspection chief, the guy that makes everybody's life harder, the guy that stops Picard from doing his job because he's like, what about all these people? Can you justify the risk? And Picard's like, yeah, I have to save the plan, whatever the mission is. Like, this is the admiral that gets in the way, and this is where he was born. This is who he was as a captain. Like, he got his rank because officially he did the job and he's time in service, but that's it.
You know the blonde female admiral, Admiral Nechayev? This is the larval form of Admiral Nechayev.
Yeah, I don't agree. I'm sorry, but his actions by the end of the episode show that you know, when he realized what the stakes were, he was like...
He panicked.
Yeah, I would do the same thing, and he just...
No. He said he was sending Crusher out. It wasn't until Admiral Picard was like, Admiral's orders, I'm taking over.
No, it wasn't until it was figured out that this Jack Crusher was also Picard's son.
Right, but he had already called Admiral's orders. Like, Picard had already taken over because he wasn't listening.
Yeah, and he asked, why are you doing this? And he said, it's because he's my son. And he goes, all right. And then he goes with it. He changes his tune right at the end. And now he's ready to go to battle.
The fact that it took that long because Picard and Riker didn't need that much. Nobody else needed that much. The only person that needed that much was him. He's the one that was like...
No, Picard needed that much too. Picard was still on the fence as well. He was like, yeah, he shouldn't be going in the hands of criminals, but I can't really make this decision. Jack wasn't giving him anything to work with.
He wasn't going to steal the captain's role until he had an absolutely personal reason to do so, but he was hoping the captain would just make the appropriate choice and have never contemplated giving somebody over to criminals. And I think that's the big difference. I think what we're actually seeing is Riker versus what Starfleet wanted Riker to be. Yeah. And the other man is what Starfleet wants Riker to be, which is, yes, technically concerning, tactfully proficient, tactically proficient, but also still a brown noser. Also still like more concerned.
I'm not convinced he's a brown noser, guys. I think you're misreading that because he says very poignantly and specifically in the first episode, he says, I've run this ship my way for 5 years. My way is what he specifically says. He says he's done things, he's gotten to his position doing things the way that he wanted to.
But
that's not how brown nosers talk.
No,
okay.
7 of 9 describes what their mission detail has been the entire time. It's routine absolutely minimal contact, minimal influence missions. Like the very like minimal chance of any bad things ever happening. Literally, like the reason I think he's a brown noser is because of the actor's phenomenal job painting him. Like the way the guy, every time he gets confronted.
I'm glad we could agree that Todd, what is his name?
Yeah,
Schnewick or whatever?
Yeah, no, the actor is fantastic.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
Agree on that.
That's what I'm saying is like, I get the vibe not because I just want to hate this guy, but because I think the actor is portraying this guy this way. Like, I really think it's a writing choice for this guy to be a brown noser. And I feel like there's a lot of character animation and like,
okay, I'm sorry, I can't agree with brown noser because if he's a brown noser, then why isn't he kissing the ass of these legends and trying to get them to look good so they write him commendations? Because I'm sorry, but that's what a brown noser would do.
All of the sentiments about the legends, because of what we described in the first episode, is that like he was basically trained that. Yes,
yeah, but we didn't call him a brown noser in the first, or you didn't call him a brown in the first episode. Now you guys are, and I'm sorry. I think that's.
I'm not calling. Well, wait a minute. Keep me out of this. I'm not calling him a brown noser.
Okay, then I misunderstood what you said. What?
I'm calling him a dillweed.
Sorry, dillweed, brown noser. Having
but
been in the service and put up with actual brown nosing officers, you can see how I get the confusion.
Right, and so this is why there's a reason why I use the word brown noser in the terms of like the military and stuff like that, is like he is literally treating them the exact way every officer treats the John Wayne recruit, the John Wayne Marine, the John Wayne Coast Guard, the guy that comes in hot. Like these guys are their proverbial John Waynes.
Can you interrupt yourself with the fan mail, please?
Oh, yeah, totally. Nemesis of Eden writes in, "Hail all, hope you're doing amazing. I'm just popping in for a few minutes before we start our live stream at 7. Shout out to Nemesis of Eden.
Hail Nemesis of Eden. Just don't forget to come back and watch it later.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
But,
so let's move
what
on.
I mean is this guy legitimately resembles what the nerdiest version of a military officer ever could be, but then so much so to the point that he would disrespect legends. Like I've met the nerdy officer that would meet a legend and be very nice and like actually accommodating, more on the level of Picard, like what we see Picard do whenever any of his legends show up, and he's like, okay, I'm here to help. You're doing it wrong, and I have to be the one that resets the moral compass to remind you who you are. But this captain didn't do that. This captain literally was ready to abandon them. Like, they jumped ship, they're on their own, I'm out. And that's not that's not a shy captain. That is somebody who is literally so averse to black marks, red marks on his record, that like he'll sacrifice.
Again, I think we're simplifying the situation here and missing some key elements that make this a much more moral gray area. One,
that was sentiment on the bridge of the ship to 7 of 9 in public. He straight up said this was their choice. They abandoned ship. They're smart enough to have not done that. We should not intervene.
Yeah. Okay.
That was his public sentiment. So that is, to me, like, that's not what somebody who's actually respectable does.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. Because any respectable captain looks out for their crew first. One, they're outside of Federation space. Now, this isn't like international waters on Earth where the Coast Guard can operate freely in any body of water regardless. No, this is like, if you're outside of Federation space, you're like subject to piracy and no one's going to come save you. That's basically how it operates. The other thing is... What?
Picard Chesty Puller getting on your ship. You follow him wherever he goes because he's worth it. This guy didn't. And the only reason he didn't, as seen through the last 2 episodes, as seen through the writing, as seen through the character's just persona, he very much looks like the only reason he won't follow Chesty Puller is because he's heard about other people that followed Chesty and lost rank, lost credibility, lost the chance at admiralship. And he's so much more about...
No, he's not. He stated that he doesn't want to lose his ship to an explosion or a crash landing. He
There
stated all the stuff that they did in the movies as his reasoning for not wanting them to be around. Like, he's not unreasonable. He hasn't been unreasonable at all here. But
it's not unreasonable, but at the same time, like, the only people that make that reasonable decision when the hero of heroes walks on board is the nerdiest nerd who's usually around us.
Let's give Nemesis of Eden the last word since he decided to stick around for a minute.
Yep. So, this is such a gray area. He knew immediately Picard was trying to schmooze and flatter him, hoping his clout would get his plan to motion, but I'll chime in more later if I can. Look, here's what I'm going to say. I don't like the character, okay? That's my feeling on it, is I don't like the character. I think the actor portraying the character is doing a fantastic job with what they've got, but I do not buy, and this is ultimately what it boils down to for me, I do not buy a Starfleet that would put this man in the captain's chair. That's my personal opinion on it. That's where I'm sitting with it, is that it has broken the verisimilitude of the show for me. This is not Starfleet to me. This is some other organization. That's where I'm at with it. And that's, I think, a fair way to put it.
Well, it is, but it isn't, though. Because, I mean, you yourself believe the only constant is change. So I agree, it's not the Starfleet we're used to. But, I mean, the Starfleet that we're seeing is sadly a lot more realistic to the United States military of today right now. And I think that's going to be a good commentary to continue to...
Peacetime officer corps. Like, that's why I feel like, that's why I'm so, like, bent on, like, pointing all these, like, things out, is, like, I honestly feel like this is the first time we've actually seen an accurate portrayal of peacetime military. Like, it's not so gratuitous that, like, he did abandon them, but the fact that he even contemplating it, like, that is such a peacetime contemplation. A wartime captain is like, we're guns ho, let's go. But this guy was like, nah.
These two geezers, these senile geezers that broke out of the home, stole my shuttle and got it destroyed. You know, I mean, it's...
Okay, so let's move on.
You still want to see what
Let's move on, guys.
Yeah, no, I'm going to say real quick, I'm liking the character of Shaw even more now after this discussion, because look at the character study that it's bringing about. So this is just further proof to positive that we are seeing an improved product here. I mean, yeah, look how passionate we got about Shaw, guys. That's pretty cool.
All right. So let's move on.
So move on to the other stuff. So I actually I really thought the...
Wait, H. Marie, you had a thought to share?
I did. Mute. Parker and I came across an interesting video about some conspiracy theory possibilities with this new Star Trek Picard storyline that they've got going on here, and I'm listening to you guys here, and I'm beginning to think that the reason Crusher doesn't want anybody to be trusted, especially Starfleet, is because Starfleet isn't Starfleet anymore. Starfleet might be something else completely different now. That could explain why Shaw is the man that he is and is the way he is, captaining the ship. There could potentially be some conspiracy theories going on here that may lead to some other answers that could explain why Crusher is now killing people. She never used to do that. She never even wanted to hold a gun. That would explain why Shaw wants to call Seven of Nine by her human given name, is because they're trying to look like Starfleet. I think this may or may not be an interesting storyline. I want to say like 8472 kind of theory going on here, like a body snatchers or potentially a stray hologram program or something like that. I don't know.
Borg upgrade into assimilation.
Gods, I hope so, is all I can say to that.
Well, dude,
H. Marie gave Corione some hope. Uh-oh. Someone's going to have a bit more positive light going into this episode this week.
Hope is the first. When it comes to Kurtzman Trek, hope is the first step on the road to this.
I'm not calling this Kurtzman Trek. I'm not, because
Okay.
I've heard that Kurtzman and Goldsmith or Goldsman, whatever, were kept away from this project, and that Terry Metalis had free reign. So we're going with Terry Trek. I think that's what Robert Meyer Burtnett's trying to coin, and that's and already we've seen drastic differences. So
hear me out. It's the only thing we can rely on is change. Then let's hope that Kurtzman's changed his policy, and he will start giving these shows to individuals to take the majority of the burden. And he'll like Kurtzman, if you're going to keep finding Terrys that are going to write these elaborate stories, please continue. So and you restore yourself in the
yeah. So you can stop just real quick, because I do want to point out a couple of things here. So apparently, and I know we've heard this about Disney before, so get your salt shakers out. It's time for rumors. Apparently there has been a sort of silent civil Cold War in Paramount, and that apparently Paramount does want to dump Secret Hideout and just sort of start to soft reboot Star Trek. And Picard Season 3 is apparently the determining factor here. Now, this could just be a theory. It could just be, hearsay. I don't have the direct sources. This is just stuff I've come across Twitter, which, information there is either false or not. That's one of the theories that I've heard. But the thing that I would say lends credibility is I've noticed that Kurtzman has been kind of quiet in the public sphere lately. The only people that I've seen out there on Twitter and even in just media in general actually talking about it and whatnot is Terry Metalis, and I think his name is Steve Blass, one of the photographers, I think, or directors of photography. So it's interesting that, and then the only other people outside of Picard that I see excited about this show at all are actors and actresses. One of the actresses from Strange New Worlds, for example, has been talking about how excited she's about it. And so I've noticed that, like I said, I haven't heard any statements or anything from Kurtzman or even Akiva as much. So
okay, here's my response to that. The problem then becomes the KK problem, okay? Because here's what happens. If it's successful, let's say something amazing happens and they find the light switch on the ship and everything goes back up from mood lighting to real lighting, and, Worf, as the silver fox he is, somehow manages to hoist this thing through, okay? And everything suddenly goes from, like...
You can pick up Raffi. I think there's a good chance.
Right. Like, it suddenly goes not terrible. Kurtzman can then say, look what I did, because my name's on it. Which is exactly what KK did with Mando. Right?
Well,
this is the problem.
Fool us once.
Wait.
We're paying attention, and I'm not going to let him do it. Straight up, this show will stand by Terry Trek. We do not stand behind Kurtzman Trek here, unless anybody else wants to speak for themselves otherwise.
I'm just going to say this. As long as Kurtzman's name is on it, it is not going to get, even if he had nothing to do with it, I'm still going to be wary as hell until they get out.
We should be wary.
Here, though, is that this is the same thing that happened with Marvel leasing to Netflix. Like, at first, we had Daredevil and we had The Punisher, and those were just unparalleled.
Luke Cage was good, too. And I enjoyed Jessica Jones.
I really enjoyed
Jessica Jones, I hear, was awesome. I never watched it because I got washed with the Dragon Ball.
If you want to see the 10th Doctor, best Doctor, be a bad guy, absolutely check it out.
I'm sorry, the 9th Doctor is best Doctor.
Oh, you and Hannah both. Ugh. Anyway, we're not talking about Doctor Who, but we are thinking of doing a rewatch of the good stuff soon. Yeah. So the other stuff I did like.
That's my thing with about like giving Kurtzman credit. Like, let's give him credit for what he actually did, which is backed out. He got out of the way, and that's.
No, actually, I don't think it's like that either. I think it was more of a, no, you're being forced to stay away from this property. Like, right. Yeah.
No, look, I will totally give credit to the straitjacket that kept him tied up in an office.
Right, so we, the audience, we thank him for his departure. and we give him credit for being gone. And that way, it's like, what do you have to learn from this? Back off. You want to keep your name attached to it. You want to keep being a part of it. You want to have some say in it. Fine.
Yeah. Like,
but your micromanagement has led to crap.
Yeah, and actually, John, I agree with that sentiment entirely, because I've seen people that are like, oh, Kurtzman needs to be fired and whatnot, and I'm like, okay, then how does that make you any different from the other woke idiots that try to destroy people's lives? Like, where do we draw the line with our sensibility and our respect?
I guess here's
grow
what I
up and
wanna
just
say.
listen to their target audience.
I
Corey,
absolutely want Kurtzman to work. And I want him to work in the field that he enjoys. I just don't want him touching the parts of Star Trek that would normally be covered by a bathing suit. Okay? That's what I want. Okay? Is I want him to, go do
that was
all
masterful. Well said.
I want him to go do all the Hannibals. I want him to go do all the Hawaii Five-O's. All the stuff he wants to do like that. Go for it. Go play. Be the most secret hideout you can be. But I would rather you do it away with it, at least 60 feet away from my franchise.
Yeah, well, even if you want to make Star Trek Secret Hideout, just stop taking our characters that we've grown to love for all of our own reasons. It's like literally just you did the thing everybody hates, and that's when somebody takes your hero and then just ruins them as a character, and then every time you look at them, you kind of see the flames of what that person did to your toy. Like it's melted, and it looks a little bit gross, but like we still know who our favorite characters are. Like, if you want to be in the Star Trek universe because that was your original passion and now you're here, like, fine. Do your own thing, though. Don't take other people's like great works and then pretend like you know how to melt them down and make them better.
Yeah,
that's wild. That's like taking jewelry and using that as your first time blacksmithing. Like, way to waste a lot of precious metal just so you could try.
You know what? A thought just came to mind after hearing that. You know what? They really could just set something in the TNG DS9 era or whatever that is classic Berman Trek, and just let it air, because if there are five active Star Trek shows, okay, we could easily do 6, maybe 7, maybe 20, because I will give credit where due here for some of these other shows. Lower Decks and Prodigy and even Strange New Worlds are such different shows in what they present. There's obviously an audience for these shows. We can't deny that.
And there's 3 shows off the top of my head that I think they could absolutely do in like Berman era or Berman style Trek that would be fantastic. Do a Starfleet Academy show, right? 100% do a Starfleet Academy show.
And we don't have to worry about it turning into, Star Police Academy, Starfleet Academy, because we already have Lower Decks for that crap.
Right. Okay. So then the next one, there is an episode in Trek where the Temporal Investigations Agency gets brought in to review an event that happens. I would love to do an episode, or like I would love to do a series following those dudes around. Like the guys who investigate after a thing happens. Like do like a JAG series almost, where they're like dealing with boards of inquiry and what really happened afterwards.
TCSI.
Yeah, right? Okay. And the third one I would love to see, and I've been pushing for this for freaking ever, is I would love to see, there was a series of novels they did called I think it was The Captain's Table. And the idea was they took each of the famous Star Trek captains and did a highlight book for them. Why not do that as a series? Have some like bar in Starfleet headquarters that is only open to captains and above, and each of them comes in and tells their story, and we do a different ship, different captain, different story every week.
Star Trek anthology. I like it.
Yeah,
I've even thought
Right.
about doing the same idea. That'd be really cool to put in the current timeline, actually.
Yeah, like you can insert these ideas in anywhere along the way, in any of the settings, and they work, provided you follow some of the core Gene Roddenberry rules.
Yeah. So yeah, all right. So the things I enjoyed though too, I did like the whole using the Titan to break the tractor beam. I thought that was cool. And I don't think we've ever really seen anything like that. Whether or not it would work, I don't know. Or maybe the Titan would just take over the tractor beam in a different instance. I don't know. That's something
I
that's
think it's a hell of a precision move. I think that's
Yeah, no, they definitely
like
knifed
that.
it in and got the right spot. So LaForge knows how to drive the ship. That's good. I also really liked Worf's intro. So I know that we're still in grimdark Trek, unfortunately, but I will give credit where due with the whole underbelly of Metalis Prime sequences, which, by the way, Metalis Prime is an actual planet that was mentioned in Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
So well before, so it probably was named after Terry, because that's usually how they come up with star systems, name it after family members or whatnot. But the thing about these underworlds is we hear stories about them, especially in Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine, I think, is the one that gets the most descriptive with this type of stuff. So we know that they exist. We've just never actually seen it on screen. So I give credit where due that instead of the pointless and unnecessary Borg chop shop, there's at least purpose that we know of right now that illegal weapons are being stored. And these are the types of situations where you would have those grimdark spots. I had to watch Worf's intro twice. I think maybe it could have been done a little bit better to get him into it, and it just, you know, it kind of tried to stick the landing on something, but at the same time, I really liked the pacifism misdirect from the trailer. Everybody was all sad about it, and then here comes Worf being Worf.
Yeah, I mean, like his opening of bringing a sword to a phaser fight and doing awesome at it is fantastic. But one thing I do have to point out: what was with the lobes on that Ferengi?
I was trying to figure. So
that Ferengi is a lobeless female, and I'm saying it right now.
I don't think he was pure blood Ferengi, because somebody pointed out that he had chin stubble, and as far as we know, Ferengi don't have facial hair. It's just ear and nose, as far as I recall. And I did a little bit of research, but then I thought, wait, if he has stubble and his ears are small, maybe he's part human. Or something else.
If they had put that anywhere on it, okay? If they had Easter egg that somewhere in a screenshot, and if it's there, because I did try to go frame by frame when they brought up the wall of like the newspaper article. I didn't see that. But if that is if somebody comes forward and gives that as the in-universe reason, cool. And I forgive them for putting a clothed female on.
We're post. Wait. Good one.
One of the things I want to say about the whole pacifist thing, though, is the fact that, like, I don't think it is a misdirect, but I think that, like, the way I see it is like, if you're capable of Worf level violence, and then you want to say that you prefer pacifism, like, that's the absolute definition of pacifism. Because, like, if you're somebody that's, like, capable of spitting hate on the internet, but you can't hardly say anything to, like, anybody in public, like, you're not a pacifist, you're weak.
You're a passive aggressivist.
Yeah,
I like that.
If you're capable of, like, literally bringing a sword to a phaser fight and winning, like, nobody even knew you were there, then
like Klingon warrior
be a pacifist. You can actually claim that, no, I prefer the noble, soft option, and it's like, okay, that sounds really weak, but like, so that's, to me, like, where I think that that's actually the best way they could have done this at all. And it, like to me, it works so well, because it's like, you hear the credits, everybody gets saucy about it, But then the first time you actually see him on screen, he's murks an
murdering,
entire room of gangsters with a sword.
Okay, here's what I will say, and this is
Mechleth specifically.
Yeah. So, piece one. If they had chosen any other word than pacifist, I probably wouldn't even have bothered with it. Okay. 2, I think I'm going to go with Robert Heinlein's thing about pacifists, that a pacifist is a contradiction in terms, and that most of them, when push come to shove, would hoist the Jolly Roger, which I really think is what Worf is. Okay, it is the I'd prefer to discuss it and negotiate, but if you push me, dude's getting a Mechleth in the face.
Right,
right?
But that's to set like I said, like to me, that is, in terms of like a warrior, it's the only time it ever actually counts, because like that's somebody who is actively trained to literally do it whatever way he wants. He'll break your knees in front of you before you even knew you had knees. And like, instead he's telling you, no, I would prefer we just walk and talk this out. And other people chose wrong. And that's what pacifism truly is it's a challenge to your standard, and it's your bad for making me not uphold my standard.
I disagree, but H. Marie has some thoughts, so let's give her the floor.
So I actually figured out that Worf was her handler at the beginning of the episode because of
Can't confirm.
Because of the way he was speaking, because he kept saying, "You are a warrior." I was like, there's only one person that I know that would speak like that, trying to encourage someone to do what they need to do, but he also was telling her, do not engage. He was actually trying to tell her, be a pacifist, don't go after this, be calm, be patient. Instead, she went after it. So what did he do? He went and kicked ass and saved the day like he always does. Yeah. But it's interesting, though, because he was basically telling her, you know, you gotta just take your time. You will figure this out. We will get this done. But because she didn't listen to his advice and she jumped the gun, then we got to see the anti-pacifist form of Worf. Also, that was also just a great intro for him as well. I squealed and screamed. He can confirm.
Oh, I 100% love when Worf goes from 0 to murder hobo in like no seconds flat. Right? I mean, that's what I love about the character. I don't. Okay. Here's, I guess, the best way to buy it. I can buy Worf having gone from, you know, the Klingon rogue that we're used to seeing him deal with. I mean, like, he personifies the Klingon rogue in every way except for the big gold ring on his ear. But I could see him becoming more of like the Klingon samurai, if you will, like preferring to sit and work on his calligraphy, but when shit needs to get done, he gets up and does it. I'm 100% behind that, but that's not a pacifist. That's a code of honor. That's a way of a warrior, right? That's where I guess this is what it boils down to for me, is for me, words matter, right? And what you choose to make as your words. I'm really hoping that when that scene comes up, he's making a joke and everyone goes, what? And he just laughs and carries on, right? That would make the scene for me, and I would have no further complaints. I'd actually go, okay, that was kind of clever, right? Well, see, like, they will earn my respect there.
Here's where the only thought that I would like challenge you on that is that's what the Magna Carta and the Bushido Code of Japan, like those were official policies of pacifism first. Like the ideas were not necessarily that like you're soft. Like being a pacifist doesn't mean being a soft person. Being a pacifist means that you would prefer to choose the way of the flow, like the way of the Tao, in the most like cutting sense. Like the fastest way to end any argument is with both parties ending up happy, right? Like both parties being winning. And so like a warrior knows that, a true warrior knows that approaching every like fight, the goal is to end it as fast as possible. If that means everybody's dead, see what Worf did. But if that means that you just don't engage at all, then you don't. And pacifism isn't necessarily like this idea that like you never ever fight. Pacifism is that the goal is to end the fight as fast as possible. And if that means never having a fight, fine.
Yeah. But speaking of fighting, now I want to turn to my final point of praise for this, where this show's going and what we've got so far. And that is, of course, the captain of the Shrike. This is... I like it. I like her a lot because this is the first time we've seen a villain. Now, the thing about Star Trek is 95% of the villains are all intelligent, right? They're usually calculated. We see maybe the Packlids and just...
Well, I would argue the Packlids are very calculating. They're just not smart.
That's...
But
well,
they're
okay,
very-
fine. They're
very
calculated,
practical.
but they're not super brilliant. So we have the Packlids, a couple of other primitives that I had thought of that I'm now blanking on. But I'm sure, you'll think of it. But
Oh yeah, the
Kazon were
Kazons,
also
yeah.
kind of a bit of a, they're kind of a stupid race too in a lot of ways. But also they're just more primitive though too. But majority of the time, Star Trek has smart villains for our smart crew to outsmart. And now we have somebody who's like smart, but super crazy. Like, this is the I'm going to slash your tires and destroy your Xbox ex-girlfriend crazy. This is the I'm going to...
Jones.
What?
Are you kidding me? She was like the picture perfect Davy Jones of space.
Like, this is the I'm going to hurtle a starship at you. I don't care that it's not practical. I don't care that it doesn't make any sense and that it's a slow-moving projectile. No, I'm going to do it just because I'm insane. And I love it. I like it. I think it's great.
Okay. You can like it. I'm trying to figure out where the science went in our science fiction. Like I'm really looking for any science at all in this science fiction, because as far as I'm concerned right now, this is space opera, and I'm okay with it. Yeah, and I'm okay with it being space opera, but Trek was always science fiction.
I think we kind of killed that barrier in the movies and with time travel, if I'm being perfectly honest.
No, non-linear time travel is theoretically possible in a quantum entangled universe.
In Nemesis, when the Enterprise collided with the Scimitar and it just kind of held there without a tractor beam or anything, when it was supposed to just keep,
Well,
yeah,
okay.
no, I agree.
That I think is a lack of knowledge in space study, because what we know about space has changed exponentially since like the 70s. Where we're at now, like anybody who knows anything about space knows that the Titan literally could have just gone vertical in a second because it had no friction. Like, because there's no such thing as vertical in space. There is literally just like this, the thing could have gone like this, and then like this, and then like this.
Okay, then let's pull out all the other nitpicks every time, the ship shakes and the crew flies around, even though that, it's an open... Okay, Star Trek's universe obviously has some weird wonky physics when it comes to space. There's sound. Okay, we still have sound in Star Trek in space. I mean...
They've actually been a lot more considerate of that in this one. It was pretty impressive. Like, it was... Even the scenes with the nebula, it was musical. You could hear that it was not actual like space noise, and even when it crashed,
but when the photons got fired,
when the photons fired, when the ships fly by, there's still noise. And Firefly is the only sci-fi show that I can recall that's actually done space proper.
Battlestar Galactica.
I liked what they did, but it still had muffled noise. But it could be what it's.
It had muffled noise because whenever we were seeing things from the presentation of whatever pilot the ship was, so you were hearing the turbines inside the ship, not outside.
Right. Well, I just mean outside the ship when the ships would fire. It sounded like underwater.
Kind of ruins that. Everything, like all the other sounds sounded like they were coming from inside the ships, or they were like ambient music, but it didn't sound like it was ship noises aside from the phasers. But like what I really liked about this bad guy is like, finally, we know what the gangsters and the drug dealers have been doing this whole time. Because like, if we know anything about reality, like when the rich get wealthy, like when the poor start getting wealthier, the rich get even exponentially wealthier. And almost no rich person in modern times is wholly like good, right? So like all of the gangsters and mobsters that are as rich as they are today and probably making more money, or all of the oil barons that are making the money that they are, what were they doing when Starfleet tech was coming out? And to me, like, that's what she is generations later. Like, she really feels like a Godfather type character, but like a Davy Jones-esque, because like you said, Parker, like instead of like piloting the ship, she's
instead
actually
of shooting a weapon, instead of like, you know, getting the person that she wants, she doesn't care about the result so much as just the process, and that's what she's fixated on.
Well, and then she also did the sadistic thing of like, all right, so you've got 15 minutes left. Every minute you take too long, I'm gonna start picking at you and just pecking one piece. And right away, she just like killed 2 people. Like that kind of like, that's the first time we've seen precision, like
Precision crazy. Yeah.
Crazy. I forget what the like psychopathy, like precision serial killer mentality. But like
sociopath.
Sociopathy. There you go. Like she's 100% not caring about that ship. And instead of piloting the Davy Jones's famous ship, she's piloting the Kraken. Like her ship this time is the Squid, and like that is who her character is. But what frustrates me is she feels like a very good gangster. But then Raffi is like the worst version of a drug addict I've ever seen in my life. Like
that was a drug addict written by people who have never done drugs.
Yeah, and what
I may or may not have written such a script at one point in time.
Met that wants to have their skin peeled back when they get high.
No one wants that sensation. Look. You know what you want from a drug? I'm going to be honest with you. This is really what you want from a drug, okay? You want something that is going to push the dopamine system in your body and the serotonin system in your body into like warp speeds of production. And then you want to magically somehow have it have no hangover. That's what you want.
Well,
if somebody created a drug like that, the world would beat a path to their door.
Well, you know what? Y'all, I don't think you all need any of that when you can all just mow a lawn. All right, let's wrap this up. We got to move on.
If I was going to invent a Star Trek drug, that would be what drug users would actually attempt to create. It would be something that could make you feel like you went through a 3-day day spa in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you take it, your body just massages all the way out. You feel amazing. And then 15 minutes later, you're just fine.
All I'm going to do to respond to that is O'Brien must suffer. And instead of 3 days, 20 years.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. It is getting too dark in here.
Yeah, let's
try. Oh, that's better. Proper studio lighting, re-engaged, reinitialized.
No.
All right, so one of the best show on Paramount Plus, unfortunately, has ended for the season. That's right, guys. It's not the end of the series. We get a second season. We gotta wait for a second season. Anyway,
I'm willing to wait for this one. Like, I will sit by the phone waiting for this episode, for the next season.
You know, as the girl said in the first half of the season, it's probably worth the wait. This show, nobody here has... Well, John, I can't remember. Did you start watching Yellowstone after you started watching this show, or what?
No, I haven't finished season 5.
Oh, okay. So you've been watching Yellowstone. Corione, you haven't touched Yellowstone. I haven't touched Yellowstone. Neither has H. Marie. We also haven't watched 1883 yet, and we are probably going to do a follow-up with that. Maybe we'll do that in anticipation of 1923 season 2. Or wouldn't that just be 1924? So
we'll see. It depends if it's the new year.
I know. So
Because he owes somebody money before the end of the year, and if they just gloss over that,
whoa. All right. Remember,
that
we're
was
near the
Non-spoiler
free.
mode.
yeah, when you're towing the line, riding the knife's edge there. So yeah, I'll go first real quick. My first impressions, watch this show. It's fantastic. Really well acted. Helen Mirren and Harrison Ford alone are worth watching it. And, you know, there's some characters you may not like, but give the show a chance. It might change your mind, and that's all I'll say on that for now. Corione, why don't you go ahead and give us your first non-spoiler first impressions?
Well, I absolutely am loving this show. And I am loving the fact that we are seeing at least four.
Could I add some emphasis to what you're saying real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, this people is coming from a man who does not typically like Westerns or this kind of era show.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm also going to say this. I think I finally figured out something of this. It's non-spoilery, but we are actually seeing 4 love stories play out in different ways and in different phases of life. And the idea, when that really hit me, that this is really more of a love story than anything else. You know, it was kind of profound, and that makes it really informs your viewing of it, especially when you realize just how bad the bad guys are and how noble the good guys are in this whole piece. I thought it was fantastic for that. I'm also loving I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm actually really loving the time setting and the setting of the theme that the world is changing around the Dutton Ranch, and we're getting scenarios where the uniqueness of the past is being forced to make way for the conveniences of the future. And that is an interesting piece to realize that that's going on. Also, the actors, every single actor in this is really doing a fantastic job. I did some checking, by the way. The native languages that are being spoken are legit. They're not phoning that in. The actresses and actors that are playing native characters are legitimately speaking the language. And they had to learn, some of them had to learn their lines phonetically because they did not know the language ahead of time. So kudos to the dedication of the people who are doing this show. Like that takes a lot. I have found out from reading up on pieces that there were some interesting callbacks to the previous series, the 1883 series. There is a callback in this episode. So they are definitely linking things together. And yeah, overall, I'm really enjoying this. I really want there to be more of this. I really want to see where some of the characters progress too. This is well put together. This is what we want to see more often.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would just, before John gives his 2 cents, I would just say that I would say it's a life story. And yeah, what is life without love? Go ahead, John.
Well, that actually is a perfect springboard. I try not to be spoilers, so I got to think it out. But so, not talking about this episode.
So how about this, John? If it's going to be easier for you, you could just give your quick initial impressions on how you feel like it, and then we'll just go to spoiler alert.
Well, so I just want to look back on the whole season because I just remembered this was the season finale, and looking back in the show is like a lot of us, I would say we're definitely on the opposite side of the people that started cancel culture or what is known as cancel culture, the idea of shutting down people that aren't hiring diversely, and we've never been in support of that culture, but also at the same time we've never been under the needle of that, so you can't really say we're feeling it. But one of the things
I'm just anti supremacy of any ideology. We'll just
Yeah.
put it like that.
I think here's how I want to put it.
Well-
And this will be real quick, I promise. The problem with the current way diversity is being implemented is it's taking the idea that we have to represent all voices regardless of quality available. What I think we would all agree is the better solution is if the other voices aren't being represented, then let's go back to the very foundation and make sure that they have an opportunity to become as good voices as everyone else, so that everyone's fantastic top tier people are represented properly. I want diversity of opportunity, not not equality of outcome.
Yeah,
And-
equity.
Yeah.
Which is just
Well,
plain
and so-
unrealistic.
In terms of writing, the way I put
Hold
that,
on, real quick. Glenda writes in, "Hello, beautiful people. Sorry I'm late. I was caught up in a MASH live stream and couldn't tear myself away." Well, you know what, Glenda? Acceptable.
Fair. My thought is on top of what you just said, Corian, is like in terms of writing and what we receive in terms of media and what we receive from writers is like there is something to what the people calling for more diversity are saying. Like they do have a point. And unfortunately, I'm not educated in what points are accurate and what points are being hyperbolic and what points are inaccurate entirely. But I feel like for once, somebody is like writing media that actually like is taking the time to teach me that without making me feel bad for not knowing it. And that's the way I would describe this show is like, finally, I'm hearing the American story as it actually happened.
Yeah.
There is no concession for the church. Like the church did what it did, and this show is putting it on full display. And I'm like, finally, like, I'm not one for like, let's beat a dead horse. But if you're going to talk about history, if you're going to say you're writing about 1923 America or 1923 the year, and like including what they did with Africa, like they didn't suddenly make all the black people these kings and queens. They were like, no, this is what 1923 Africa looked like. It was not winning, you know.
And I'm also going to say there were probably some really fantastic community priests and nuns out there in the United States, just genuinely trying to take care of their people and make a decent community happen. We're just seeing the less ideal of that.
Not even so much just the less ideal. We're seeing the result of mass hysteria without any access to knowledge, because that's what populated the world until we've all started talking as much. Like nobody has been as smart as we've been as a generation. Like 100 years ago, nobody could actually even theorize quantum physics. Like the idea that like you can now imagine it and make it into a Marvel comic fiction movie 100 years ago is impossible, right? And so that's something that like made these people backwards, is they literally just had no frame of reference for what better actually looked like. And so whoever was in charge, and usually authority came from dominance, from being assertive, from being aggressive, from being toxic in general, just a bad person, right? They were manipulative because it worked, and it was still working. Like they weren't getting called out for it. So those people just propagate those bad behaviors. And I think that's more what this show is showing us, because they all did contemplate it. They all did debate right and wrong at some point. Even the priests were given their chance to share their piece. But when challenged, they did what authority figures do, which is abuse authority so that you listen. And that, I think, is what the show did such a beautiful job illustrating in this just one season. And like, I am so excited for everything that comes next.
Yeah. Like, I do, well, okay. Let's go ahead and, go to spoiler alert here, because it'll be a lot easier to set that. So anyone who wants to put us on mute but still watch, now's your chance. Or if you don't care, now's your chance to not care. Yeah, I do hope that, we do see some religious figures, particularly of a Christian faith, end up coming across and being like, okay, no, these guys, they don't represent us, and this is not correct. And that way we could just have a little bit of, look, not everybody who believes is a shithead. But yeah. I say the same for anybody. I mean, Corione, you've been a fantastic representative of the stuff that you believe in. You're proof positive that if I had a baby, I wouldn't have to worry about you eating it. So
no, I usually prefer, roast beef, to be honest, or chicken. So.
Same here. But at the same time, yeah, I'm not going to dispute history. It's like people that got upset about the January 6th footage being shown in Strange New Worlds. It's like, so, first of all, that episode did a very good job of saying, no, you both are being idiots. And, are you mad that the event happened? And that's what I would say to any religious person who's offended. It's like, go do your homework. No, don't go to your church and do the homework. They're not going to tell you the truth. Unfortunately, a lot of churches, they don't like to touch this stuff. They like to let you learn about it in school and then tell you, oh, hey, everything you're being taught in school is Satan. How convenient, right?
And also, churches aren't going to teach their new pastors about this because it's like the same thing with the Marine Corps. They don't teach us about My Lai and all of the horrific things that Marines did when they were left unchecked. But they do teach us you're going to be watched. 90% of people that get out of the Marine Corps have anxiety because Big Brother was 100% real. And that was a result of My Lai. And they later do explain it. They didn't hide it when we eventually talked about it. But at the same time, there was a time when they wouldn't have talked about it. There was a time they would have never acknowledged committing war crimes. Yeah. And to this day, they won't officially.
But moving on now to the rest of it. So this show won me over this episode. I was already liking it, but I now kind of give a shit about Spencer and Alex. And this was the couple that I've absolutely loathed up until this episode when they decided to take a stand against traditionalist garbage and a bunch of, nonsense that really should have no say in how we choose to live our lives. And when they actually, when both of them behaved very much like Americans, I was starting to be won over. And I didn't like that because then they went and just go after your emotions with that departure where I'm like, I'm not crying over this. I'm not, but I care now. Crap.
I'm also going to say that is 100%
episode.
Hold on.
Sorry, I just want to get this out real quick. If that wasn't the theme of this episode, that just what's about to, and then just pause for 30 seconds and get another reason to get really excited, and it just kept cutting to all these horrible endings for season 2, just ready to tie some really crazy things up. Go on, Corey. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that is also 100% how you handle a blowhard in a nightclub-like environment, especially if their parental unit is nearby. Because when you can say to them, "Is this your son?" and they're like, "Yes," you go, "Then get a leash on him," right? Because that's 100% how you should be handling it. There was nothing Spencer did during that entire altercation I can realistically disagree with on how a real person should handle situations like that. No hot-headedness, no getting out of control. Violence was incredibly carefully applied so that everybody could walk away with their honor if they had chosen to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was great. The moment that really got me was the young couple that's at the Dutton Ranch. Names escape me, and I totally meant to look them up. Oh well. But that whole speech, I think, was just fantastic for anyone in that unfortunate situation where you can't have children. And it's like, well, maybe your purpose is to take care of other people. Maybe your purpose is to, look after others and not necessarily worry about whether or not you have kids of your own. And that was husband of the year material right there.
I was tearing up so bad. That was so beautiful because like that's the speech you give to your significant other when they feel like their dreams just crashed. Like you don't make them feel bad for feeling bad. You just talk up all the people that were in the same ish circumstance that they know got out of it and made better and they too look up to. And you give them a reason to live past it. And that was just like I cannot imagine thinking that speech up. Like whoever wrote that had to have
Whoever wrote that went through
necessary.
that.
Yeah. That's dark and it was so beautiful.
That's definitely one of those conversations that, I mean, you never want to have, but you can tell that you got through it by the end if you can still hold each other together. And that's exactly what happened there. And it was beautiful. And it was
and so perfectly acted.
But it wasn't it not just in terms of writing, in terms of human.
Yeah.
Like you say that to somebody going through that moment, you're not hurting them.
No.
Like that was so beautiful. Whereas like normally sometimes like the speech is a speech and you're like, yeah, you probably shouldn't say that. But this one was one of those ones where you could learn a thing or two.
Yeah. My daughter has a God's mother who basically let us know at one point that she thinks that the best thing that she can possibly do is be the best God's mother she possibly can to her kid. And I mean, I absolutely love her. I think she's amazing. But she will do things like randomly show up, having gone on a shopping spree for our kid for clothing and just been like, I'm showing up with all these really cool outfits for her because I think that would be a fun thing that the two of us could bond over. And you know what? They do. And she just basically made the determination that she was going to be the best God's mom that my daughter could have. Like if she can't have an actual fairy godmother, because I'm not willing to make those kind of deals. She has her aunt, and that's awesome. And that's absolutely amazing. And
well, it sounds like you don't need to get her a fairy godmother. You already have one.
It might be kind of nice in case she ever needs magical stuff done, but just saying.
And teach her yourself.
But that's so much work.
I know, and you already got one kid you're dealing with enough as is. Yeah, this really, the pacing, I was not bored at a single moment in this entire show. I mean, you know, I hate how much I care about Spencer and Alex now. Damn you, show. Because, you know, it's like, that's also one of the scariest parts of the entire season. That I still think about the whole ghost ship encounter, and I'm like, creepy. It's every time it pops up on the frickin' screen, the tugboat shot in the opening intro, I'm like, ugh.
Every water. I'm waiting for it to show up again. Part of me is thinking that this is a twist with Titanic. Like, actually, there's just thousands of these boats in the water.
Would you guys believe that I actually looked up the Majestic just to make sure it did not crash as soon as I saw the name on the thing? Like, I immediately looked up like what day that ship went down just to make sure it did not go down in 1923 when they got on board it.
Wasn't the ship that they boarded to send the message, wasn't that one of the ones that went down in World War II?
Yes, it is one that went down in World War II. The Majestic went down in World War II, but it didn't go down until World War II. So when I saw it, I was sitting there going, I got to quickly look this up on the register and where it sank and how it sank. Because I swear to God, if they're on another doomed ship, I'm losing it.
So I wasn't the only one that was half expecting another ghost ship to collide with them at some point.
Oh, as soon as he got into the dinghy, I was worried the ghost ship was going to take the dinghy out.
in the middle of the harbor.
I'm just waiting for the ghost ship. Like, honestly, there's this game called Choo Choo Charles. Now I'm just waiting for Ghost Ship McGhost Ship, and it's literally just you trying to dodge this giant ship at every point in the ocean.
That's
like it's gonna show up in Montana, dude. Like I'm at that point where it's like they're gonna be on the Dutton Range, and suddenly, whoom, ship comes flying.
Ship
through.
just comes, it just falls out of the sky. Yeah. But then that'd be a great metaphor for life too. You know, you're fighting for your life in the middle of battle, and you're doing well, and you got calculated, and plump out of the top of the sky, you get crushed by a ghost ship. It's totally normal. Also, obligatory like and subscribe remark. And share the stream if you guys like what we're doing here, and if you enjoy having a good time and talking about shows, but having fun talking about shows, well, we try. Again, I can't praise the show enough. I'm very impressed. I was very impressed with Tulsa King. Taylor Sheridan's obviously the reason that Star Trek still has the lights on, because without him, there wouldn't be any Paramount Plus subscriptions. And so, Glenda writes in, invite the like button to tea. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah, if you haven't seen 1923, if you haven't seen 1883, if you haven't seen Yellowstone, well, I haven't seen Yellowstone or 1883, and I really, really like 1923. Can't wait for 1924.
Oh, the other piece that I was going to mention, the little Easter egg.
Yeah.
The Comanche reservation that they're heading to, that plays a prominent role in 1883.
Ah. So we probably will want to go back and watch 1883. I wonder if it's also, near the same Comanche tribe as Prey.
Okay, if that's her life, that's a crazy freaking life right there.
I'm really curious as to how much of this is setting up later seasons of Yellowstone, because now finding out that like English royalty is involved in Yellowstone in 1923, like how much is that going to come into play in 2023 Yellowstone?
Well,
it like what we were discussing with Tulsa King being a potential like opener or part of this Taylor Sheridan universe, like is that same thing going to happen now with London opening up and more the way he's writing these stories, I really just want to see him write how the story of the universe is going right now. Like the state of the world as
you know what? I'd rather Sheridan put all these shows down and take over all of Star Trek. Yeah. Or at least
I would rather have
Yellowstone
building to Star Trek. Like he's got 1923, and then he's got 2023. Next, he's got 2123, 2022, 23.
Yeah, 25, 23. Yeah, no, just give him Star Trek. Like this is the reason why Paramount Plus still exists, is because of Tulsa King, Yellowstone, and 1883, and now 1923. This is
the Duttons sitting around the kitchen table arguing about whether they should put in a replicator. Just putting it out there.
Dude, the Yellowstone is now a ship, and it's just the Yellowstone.
Oh, it's a class of runabout.
A class of runabout?
Yeah, in Star Trek Online, there is a Yellowstone class that Terry Kim designed.
There you go.
Yep.
I think it should totally be just like, I think it should be its own ship. Like, basically, instead of running the farm, they've started a habitat ship that just continues the farm. They just
kind of like the turtle ship in Orville.
Yeah, exactly. But in this case, like it's the same space cowboys of Firefly. Like these are the guys that became Firefly. And it turns out like the main people in Firefly is actually the Federation. They just call them something else.
That sadly could actually work, but anyway. All right. Speaking of the Federation, it's time to head back out to the Final Frontier for our second to last quick set. We're gonna spend like 15 minutes on this, maybe less. I'm gonna be honest. Not the worst episode of DS9, not the best. Glenda says, I aim to misbehave. Well, you know what, Glenda? You get a quick story time. So, in it's little known video game called Star Trek Online, I actually do have a Malcolm Reynolds cosplay character that I sometimes run around in. Even got a jacket and everything. It's really cool. But I got that ship, the Spinal Lance 3 nacelle Dreadnought Galaxy class, the Galaxy X as it's most often referred to. And I actually decided to name it the I Aims to Misbehave because that seemed like the appropriate name for a ship that Captain Malcolm Reynolds should fly if he ever ended up in Star Trek. This episode of DS9, I don't even want to bother with a plot synopsis because I think by then we'll run out of discussion time anyway.
Well, I refer to this episode as how Cisco got his groove back.
Yeah, he's on that. Well, and that's what I do like about it. It's a very realistic approach to spousal grief, from what I've been able to observe and hopefully never have to experience.
Yeah, don't. 1 out of 10 do not recommend.
Sorry to hear that. It does a great job of showing the effects, and that there's really no time limit to grief. You know, we're 4 years since Jennifer's death at Wolf 359, and he still hasn't quite gotten over it until he meets the figment of someone's imagination. You know, I don't even know why I put the spoiler thing on, because this show is old. Yeah, we're gonna go back to general discussion. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been 4 years since Jennifer's death, and so, you know, here comes the figment of an imagination of some other guy's wife, and of course, you know, she doesn't remember what the figment of her imagination did, which, okay, that seems either convenient or she's lying. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of skippable, actually, in all retrospect.
The way I would describe her power is dream walking, but literally walking. And so the reason she like doesn't remember is like the same reason you don't remember a dream. She probably remembers like, oh, that was a good dream, but like it doesn't feel like it actually happened.
Yeah. And I mean, I do like the character of Sayatek. Like, he's just a fantastic jerk, right? But he's lovable about it, and that's what makes him a good character to have in this role. I also liked his humility when push came to shove, and him realizing, look, I am not the man my wife needs, and having to deal with that, right? Like, imagine a dude who's basically all ego, right? Who's all about the wonders that he creates for others because he just loves watching their faces when they come across something fantastic that he built. And still not being the right person for the love of your life, right? If anything, this is both an affirmation for Cisco getting his stuff together and learning to love again, as much as it is for like the tragic downfall of Sayatek, right?
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful little piece. Like, I'll admit, I usually skip this one on rewatches, because there's nothing really big that happens plot-wise to anything throughout. Like, it's very skippable. You wouldn't miss anything. But as a character development for Cisco, it's
necessary for at least one watch, yeah. And I mean, some hell of last words right there. Let there be light, and you know, ignite a dead sun. We could only hope to go out so badass.
Well, no, that's what I really liked about the Doctor is like, he was 100% like as close to a psychopath as a human can get, because he was self-aware enough to know that he was the problem, but his ego was also what drove his science and his ability, and it was fine. Like basically he was Elon Musk. If Elon Musk was a Federation scientist, just do your science, go. Like, Elon Musk would spend his whole life just sciencing science, and yeah, he'd be a dick about it for sure. But that drive in him is what gets his science where it is today, and that's also like what this guy represented. But he was so self-aware. He was like, yeah, all my other wives left me because I'm fun to be around with all this hype, But then you realize that's all this ever is like, I run on that stuff. That's my energy. And if you don't like it, like, fine. Like, and that was a beautiful thing. It's like
he mainlines hypium. Yeah.
Yeah. And he knew that, and he told them that, but then it, like, that I thought was the pretty thing. I don't think what he did was the right way to do it. Mostly because of how smart he was. I do fault him for marrying somebody who mates for life. Like, that was pretty, that was his character flaw. And that's what I liked about him, is he did have a character flaw.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he redeemed himself. He was like, yeah, I made that mistake, so I have to do the one thing that will set her free. And I'm smart enough to know that, like, I can't leave anybody missing me.
Yeah.
And he did, like, that's what made his whole thing a bang. I didn't like the fact that he said, let there be light, mostly because, like, there's so much about Gene Roddenberry that was, like, anti-theism in terms of letting it be in his stuff. So, like, the fact that he would let somebody disrespect it in his stuff.
Oh, dude.
Kind of, like,
if you think that Gene Roddenberry was an anti-theist,
I mean, in
his
rules.
his notes. Oh yeah,
Well,
like his rules for the world is one thing.
Anti-theist, but mostly in the sense that, like, he legitimately didn't believe in any of the theologies that currently exist.
So even,
but he loved using
I
the
respect, and I believe in that. But what I do mean, though, is, like, that's what I mean.
You know what? I'm gonna put it to you like this, John.
But I don't think he would have let somebody disrespect them.
I don't. Let me put it to you this way. Well, we're beyond disrespecting the legacy of Gene Roddenberry with naming a character after him and having him sweep up, gobbledygook goo in STD season 3. So I will say this: the Roddenberry rules, huh?
Before DS9?
No, it happened after.
Well after, but DS9 was also post-mortem.
Like, in terms of DS9, like, DS9 was very good at, like, following most of the rules or loopholing them, not straight out, like, changing.
Well, I mean, I would argue that the character wasn't necessarily blaspheming, for lack of a better term, on it. I would argue that this individual character's ego was so massive that only this guy would try to compare himself to the creation of the universe.
That's what I got from it too.
That way, honestly, that's exactly the right. Yeah, that makes way more sense.
Yeah,
I feel that actually a ton now.
Yeah.
Because
the thing about what you're saying is, I do want to touch on what you said about the Roddenberry rules, and I think it goes back to what I said about getting a 6th or 7th Star Trek show going. Use the Roddenberry rules for that type of Star Trek show, because the Roddenberry rules simply do not work with DS9. DS9, in its subversion of the Roddenberry Bible, actually ends up bolstering Roddenberry's idealism by showing how it would actually function and the realistic struggle to get to the Enterprise D utopia standard would be like. And that's why
I love watching DS9 against the rules, and that's why I'm calling it out. But Corion's answer does go right back to the loophole logic, where it's like, no, actually, they painted this guy as that egotistical. He would literally pretend to be the Christian God on his way out. Like,
he's literally Jesus, sacrificing himself to reignite his son.
Not Jesus. Jesus is dad.
Well,
like, that's how ego he is.
God did.
I would actually argue that I don't think you can find a better Prometheus metaphor than what just went down either.
So, yeah, like, ego on top of ego on top of ego.
Yeah, right? It's a tower of egos all the way down.
But that's what I mean by, if you compare it to the Roddenberry rules, Corion pointing that out to me fixed it immediately.
Yeah.
Like, I legitimately was like, no, this feels like a disrespect. And then Corion goes, no, wait. And then I was like,
yeah,
wait, that's the loophole of the rule. And that was honestly, that's what makes this show more fun, because now when I compare it to everything else I've watched, I'm like, all of it makes sense. Like you were saying, like, Enterprise Deep Space Nine is what it is because Deep Space Nine is what it is.
Yeah.
and that makes it awesome versus nerdy.
Yeah.
Because without watching Deep Space Nine, it's a lot of like military fluff.
Yeah.
You know?
Like the way I like to say it is, if you take the Gene Roddenberry rule book, what Deep Space Nine is what happens when you hire a Ferengi rules lawyer. Right? You know?
That's pretty good.
Now, what happens with Kurtzman Trek is when you hire a Cardassian lawyer. But anyway.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, and I think this discussion and I think our episode tonight has really shown that I think regardless of whether or not they decide to, make another last season of Picard, regardless of whether we get Discovery season 5, regardless of whatever shows continue on or don't continue on, I think we are just simply at that need for a Star Trek show that is based on the Roddenberry Bible. And it doesn't have to compete. It's not going to compete because, like I said, we've had people even come on this show and specifically state in our comment section that they like Prodigy but don't care about Lower Decks. I've heard other people talk about how, people like Discovery, Strange New Worlds, and all the other Star Treks, but hate Lower Decks. I've seen people say that, I love Lower Decks, this is great, the rest of Star Trek is dumb. There's an audience for everything at this point in time. So,
what I would say, like with this episode, is you guys said it. I think you guys said it exactly right. Like it is like a one-time watch episode, but you have to watch it in the way that, like I've been watching it, which is episodes in a row.
Yep.
Because like I understand why you guys don't care to watch this episode again because you already know who Sisko becomes. But me watching this episode, it really is Sisko getting his like swagger back. Mostly in the sense that, like, his son was such a, like, adult about it. Like, I feel like his son being that was a double entendre in the sense, A, that it helped Sisko, like, feel like he could move on romantically, but also it was a confirmation that, like, he was raising a mature adult. Like, his son wasn't acting like a child, like, no, my mom is the only mom I'll ever have. Like, that's childish behavior. Instead, his son had agreed with death and understood it and grown past it. And he was like, wow, you've grown with the scars. Like, you never grow, like, out of pain. You, like, it becomes a part of you. It becomes something you live with forever. So but, like, this show did that. Like his son acted like a mature child about it. Like I'm not going to say he acted like an adult, but it was adult behavior, right? He was still a child, but he was an adult about it, and that's a confirmation that Sisko hasn't been holding him back, and his mother's death hasn't been holding him back, and that was like such an important thing to see because like next week's episode, whatever happens, it's like that happened. And to me, as somebody who enjoys those kinds of scenes, like that was awesome too. So like this, like for me, this week was a lot of like really trying to hit those heartstrings. I think Picard tried, and it was just like the fatherly instinct kicked in, right? And that's a heartstring. But like these other two were like, no, this is how a master hits them. Like, and for you guys, it was like, this is how like you hit them without missing them later, right? Like that's how little this one hit in terms of later episodes. So I think that's like a really cool point about this episode is it still hit the heartstrings, but you're saying like the way you guys took it is like, yeah, this doesn't even come close to later episodes.
Well, I guess this is the best way to put it. There are some episodes of Deep Space Nine that pick up like you can watch it a dozen times and still not get all the nuances of, right? You can rewatch them and learn something new about each character. This one feels very much like you watch it one time and you're good. Like you understand the subtext of it, right? And you understand like all the major plot points. There's nothing new to be gained from a rewatch of it. That being said, it's a good episode. It's just one I typically skip because it's ultimately I don't get anything new out of it on subsequent watches. Now that may just be me, I'll freely admit that, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I didn't really remember this one, and I basically remembered why by the end. So,
But to be like, what that means in general is like how much you guys hype this show up, right? The reason we're watching it is because it's worth it, and I think that's a testament. Like for us, is like
well, and
writers
it's
who
also because
write,
of Strange New
but also,
Worlds.
like,
So
all the people that are holding the property of Star Trek, like you guys should go back and watch this because here's all the beats that actually worked and landed. You guys are writing Picard, check it out. Like this is a heartstring without being like belligerent about it. Like pulling the dad string at this day and age is getting tried and true. So like, let's pull some other versions of the heartstring.
Yeah.
You know, add some frets to the chord, I should say.
yeah. So
Galenda comments that Jake is a very cool character. I would agree. I think
I definitely agree. Love
Yeah.
the actor.
all right.
and
Well, if
also
you
a
haven't,
cool human being.
Yeah.
Point.
if
I was
you're-
just saying, also a very cool human being as a regular, like as an actor as well.
yeah.
So,
If you're like, if you watch this show, then chances are you don't live under a rock, and so you probably know that tonight is Corey Owen's Picard Palette Cleanser, the show that I honestly don't want to watch because I don't like where it's going, but you know, there's also rumblings at Lucasfilm that this time Kennedy's gonna get fired or whatever, and, you know, this will be the Star Wars celebration year that she actually walks off the stage, no longer in charge of Lucasfilm. Look, I'll believe it when I see it, okay? That said, we do have Mandalorian dropping tonight, I think midnight Eastern time. So, if you live on the Pacific coast, you get to see it technically a day early. Then again, I could be wrong. Could also be same as Paramount's stupid rules. I am not excited, to be perfectly honest. Mainly because it just seems like we're doing the kid and Mando running around the galaxy again. Which would mean that, as it stands, the Disney Wars fanfiction Kennedy canon is still being preserved. So I don't like the looks of that at the moment, but this is just trailer speculation. And I don't know, I guess maybe after Book of Boba Fett, maybe after my lack of enthusiasm to not watch Andor, and I mean, I really liked not watching Andor, I'm less hopeful for Star Wars than I am Star Trek. But we like to change people's minds on this show, so who wants to try to get me hyped for Star Wars again? I don't want to be hurt.
okay, so here we go. Here's why I think you should be willing to love again. Okay? This season is going to primarily focus on Mandalorian culture and Mandalore itself. This is an aspect of Star Wars we haven't gotten on the major screens. We've gotten it in video games, but we haven't gotten it on the major screens.
We also got it in Clone Wars.
We did get some of it in Clone Wars, but we didn't get the culture of Mandalore.
Fair enough.
Really. Okay? We're going to get that this time. We're going to get to see, and what I did like while I think that Grogu should have been left with Luke and training and whatnot, what we're going to do is that I'm sure they're going to use Grogu and his point of view as the lens with which we get to learn Mandalorian culture through. And that's a good use for the character.
I did find it fascinating that he's still connected to the Force in the way that he is, because my understanding of Jedi politics is that if a potential Force user is discovered, taken to the temple, and decides to refuse training, that apparently they're supposed to be cut off or something.
I don't know if I've ever seen that in canon, but
well, and I know they didn't technically do it to Ahsoka either, even though that was kind of implied that she
well, they
wasn't
didn't do
a
it
Jedi
to
anymore.
Dooku either, right?
Although Dooku kind of escaped in his own way, but I don't know.
I think the big thing with Mandalorian, I like the way you put it. It's another adventure with the guy and the baby.
The guy and the mighty merchandise child.
Well, so like we forget that like Grogu is small and like the biggest he's ever gonna get is like 2.5 feet tall. He's also 50 years old at episode 1. Right. So time is passing. He's aging according to there's no age constant.
His time dilation is different. We can definitely confirm
all
that.
Their time dilations are different. All their musculature growth dilations are completely different. And so I think that I think the way like Grogu, like especially his lineup with 50 years, the Clone Wars, like that's Obi-Wan's time off. Like, is Grogu a Yoda clone that got lost?
Well, like here's what I think is probably the coolest part about this is that we know that maturity-wise he's going to be about this big, but we also know he's taken a couple of levels of badass in the off season.
But we also know that like we don't know how much people were teaching him anything at all ever because he was so small, so they just automatically treated him like an infant for the last 50 years. So like his experience with Mandalore is like his first chance just listening to adult, right? So like how much has he actually just been deprived of education, but also like educating and learning what he could? And so now he's like actually getting experience and using a lot of his education while also like getting it in the roughest way possible. So for me, like I just want it to be good, but I also like really hope that it's more blast off points for future like films. Like I love Star Wars. I always want Star Wars to go on forever. Like there was a lot of people that absolutely despised the original prequel trilogies. And because of that, like just hate, it led to no Star Wars until this sequel trilogy. Like if we had this,
no, we had Clone Wars. Jeez, you guys, it's like a memory wipe with you two tonight.
No, hey man, I love Clone Wars. I loved Rebels.
I'm gonna say,
I did too. All through.
I haven't actually gotten through the Clone Wars yet. I've been saving it for my son. Like once we started like getting into Star Wars, I really wanted to get into it, and so I got into Bad Batch, and I was like, "This is awesome." But then I was like, "Wait, I have a 1-year-old, so now I'm like waiting till he's like 4." And then we're going to start Clone Wars because he is getting close to cartoons, but he hasn't watched any yet.
Fair enough.
So I want to get into it. But so I do really only talk about the live action stuff. So like what I mean though is more like, of the good live action, Mandalorian has yet to actually fail us. Yes, it did get a little stale, but to me it was like more of a galaxy anthology, just showing you a diversity in planets and a diversity in journey. To me, it was more like the Fellowship of the Ring of the Lord of the Ring movies. It was a lot of walking. But I really hope this one, even if it is a lot of walking, I hope that like they actually take something with these extra planets rather than just abandoning them and going to some other story like previous in the series, like what they did with Andor. Like if Andor was about a character in the Mandalorian universe parallel journey, that would have been more of a reason for me to watch it. But because it was a spin-off of a spin-off to A New Hope, I was like, I just don't care at all.
Yeah,
like I still haven't seen that one either. But with Mandalorian, we've got 2 greats. I think number 3, I hope it's great, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have some really decent opportunities in this season. We have Katie Sackhoff's character who is going to want that Darksaber back, and she's going to have to pick the opportune moment to take it. We have potentially an opportunity to organize the Mandalorians into a unified force for the first time in a long time, which could lead to an epic journey of uniting the different clans and factions of Mandalore together into an effective force to be a force to reckon with in the Outer Rim again. We have an opportunity here to have Grogu learn about some sort of connection between ancient Mandalore and force abilities that are going to be unique to him now, because he'll be the only one that gets an opportunity to learn it. We have potential here for a lot of different unique story arcs. Heck, we even have an opportunity for a unique story arc where we deal with Din Djarin's aversion to droids and him getting over it, potentially, and getting to be more understanding about it, or coming to some sort of accord, because we've had a decent droid turn out before. So there are options, there are opportunities here for character development, for growth, for decent plot points. There's a lot here that can be done, and I'm more than willing to give them the opportunity to do it.
I think it's so funny the way you just painted that is literally like the Mandalorian has been Luke after Darth Vader and after Episode 6, the story we were looking for. But like, instead of the Jedi and uniting the Jedi and bringing them out of the shadows, it's the Mandalorian bringing the Mandalorians out. Which is a story that like we've also been calling for ever since Jango Fett really blew up Boba Fett, and then also like exploded that whole character as a character, you know.
Well, and the Knights of the Old Republic also gave Knights of the Old Republic established a lot of the Mandalorian lore, Mandalore,
right?
Yeah.
And that's because
Mando lore.
Boba Fett demanded that Jango Fett exist. Jango Fett made Boba Fett look so much cooler, so everybody liked both of them as much as they do, which then made them write KOTOR with Mandalorian.
Little backwards again. KOTOR came out in 2002, also the same year as Attack of the Clones. And since KOTOR's a video game, that story would have been written probably at about 1999, 2000, roughly.
Well, here's also what I am going to say, though, about...
With Lucasfilms, I feel like there was bleed.
Well, okay, hear me out, though, on this one, John.
No, wait, I might be getting my games confused. Sorry, John. Let me hold that thought and correct myself.
Yeah. So you remember how you said, like, it would be like what we wanted Luke to do, run around and unite the different Jedi or whatever, or find them? Unfortunately, we've already had that show. It's called Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Well, no, it'd be more like, is that still the same thing? It's like if Aang was able to go out and find new airbenders that had like showed up.
Yeah, like, it's called Legend of Korra.
Yeah. That's exactly what that episode
Even Legend of Korra didn't hardly find it. They had
hey, spoilers.
Hey, yeah.
Sorry. Well, what I mean is like nobody's actually really handled this as hard as Mandalorian really is. Like you just said, Corian, like like you just said the painting for the picture that we're looking for, and it took me a minute to realize that that's exactly what we've been hoping for. And then now you say Avatar, and it's like, again, it's another show that almost got there.
So
now we want to see what happens when they actually do unite.
Yeah. So I forgot this year,
bad, but into a big good. Like, what is Mandalore, the civilization as an actual society in its own universe, look like?
Yeah.
Same with what does a Jedi planet of good Jedi look like? We've seen tastes.
So Petey's got something here.
So, I was wrong, but I think we're both kind of right here. KOTOR came out July 15th, 2003. So this year is KOTOR's 20th anniversary. And so I think you are right in that a lot of the Jango hype did play into the interest of the Mando lore in KOTOR.
More what I mean is like, say there's like 10 Boba Fett diehards on the entire KOTOR team. Jango Fett shows up. Now there's 100 Boba Fett diehards. Now we have to do Mandalorian. Well, that's the way I can decide. Like nobody was like, I'm averse to it, but also nobody was like really pushing for it. But then Jango Fett shows up to the scene, and everybody's like, okay, these guys are
So I reconsidered the story plots that you've already put into the game, and I think they're actually going to be perfect. Yeah. Canderous Ordo is gonna be a household name.
God, man, that guy is so good, though.
Oh,
He
man.
made me want a basilisk droid more than anything else in life.
He's the reason I chose Bounty Hunter on SWOTOR, my first playthrough ever, and paid the token card for.
I straight up made him a Sith Lord. I gave him a red lightsaber, and he was a badass with that, and it was awesome. And I was like, yes, Canderous Ordo should have had a lightsaber, and yeah, no.
Oh, dude, I loved, like, Boba Fett was my, like, favorite because everybody had already picked on the others, and I had to be contrarian. So, like, I say all that hype because that's what my thought was with Boba Fett as well.
Yeah.
And,
all right, I want to thank everybody, our podcast listeners, those watching live. I do want a quick shout out, of course, to Nemesis of Eden and Galinda. Thank you for contributing to the chat conversation this evening. And to everybody else who continues to support the Ryder Brothers, we are so thankful for your support. That's why we're going to continue to deliver you a quality product. And of course, if you have suggestions for content you think we might enjoy reviewing, please send us any of your inquiries at theriderbrothers@gmail.com. Any last quick final thoughts?
Mando is going to kick Picard's ass.
So once again, we're back to the Star Wars Trek rivalry, and for the next few weeks, for sure, we get to have a Star Wars Trek sandwich on the Ryder Brothers, which, oh no, please don't.
Yum yum yum.
Yeah,
sandwich.
no, we haven't had action like this since Strange New Worlds, and what were we watching at that time? All right, I'm Petey York. We'll see you next week. This has been a presentation of the Ryder Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Ryder Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.